Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jess plus Scott plus You show. We are so glad to have you here today. I have to tell you, before I even get to any sort of introduction, that this show I have been looking forward to since I thought it up in my little teeny tiny pea brain sometime last year. And it's been waiting and waiting and waiting, and it finally came together, and here we are tonight. And my brain isn't actually pea-sized, but it sounded good in that particular moment, and I'm sure I'm going to hear about that later on in this conversation. So what is our intention for today? Our intention for today, look what I've got. I am a 12th man through and through. Boy, did the guys representing Seattle in the NFL Super Bowl do a fabulous job. They got us there. They played a great game, and I am so excited to have them come home, rest up, and have a fabulous year next year. And we look at that, and you hear all of these conversations, blah 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 blah, and after a while we've got to tune them out, and then we start applying these things that we hear about some of our heroes. We hear about some maybe not our heroes, especially if we were Patriot fans, whatever the case may be, or I don't know, maybe because you're a Patriot fan you liked some of that kind of talk, who knows. The idea though that when we listen to what's in our head and we listen to what other people say, and if they align, but they're not in a positive fashion, what does that do for how we show up? What does that do then for the way that we walk into our into the way we have dinner with our friends or our family, or we walk into our work and we approach the work and the clients that we are going to be working with? It's a little bit of food for thought. And I'm going to pull out my favorite book, The Go-Giver by Bob Burg, and one of the things that I think is really pertinent to what it means to do something really well and work incredibly hard and taking the extremities of every possible opportunity and turning around and putting it into action. Whether it works or not, it's still a success because the action was taken. And especially when we talk about the law of authenticity, where we show up as ourselves. When we show up as ourselves, and that being one of our most valuable gifts, only then do we get to start thinking about this idea of giving plus receiving to create and equal some sort of value exchange. And with that, we will see you right after the opening credits.
Okay, Jess, this is going to be one of our best shows ever. I can hardly wait. I'm going to take it over to you, and let's go.
Brilliant, Scott, brilliant. So that little voice inside your head, and what does that mean, and how do we handle that and respond to it and embrace it and use it to our advantage? With us here to talk about it is Manny St. Victor and Craig Calvert. Guys, welcome to our show.
Thank you, feel very, very welcome. You were quite the welcomer.
And everybody, before I continue, look at the screen one more time. Do you see the similarities? These guys have requested the same sparkle that I've got in mine. So they are so special. They're the only two other people in the entire world that have the same Jessica sparkle right here on our show.
I'm blinged out.
I love it. Okay, so Manny, take a minute, please, and introduce yourself for us and why you get excited about this topic.
That little voice in your head, I trained in psychiatry, so that little voice in your head kept me busy. You know, it's the root of all inspiration, all trouble, all of everything, basically, because I'm passionate about it, and overcoming it is the key to being your full, authentic you. Though a lot of people think that that little voice is the authentic them, it's not.
That's great.
That is great.
Well, I took a slightly different pathway than med school. I'm a certified psychometrician and with a background in neuroscience. And one of the things that I focus on that this really resonates with me, what we're talking about tonight, is that the little voice that's in your head is often controlled by outside channels. And once you learn to control your channels, you control to a certain extent, the voices inside your head. Because I like to think of our thoughts as like we're a boat on an ocean. We can have some control of where the boat goes, but we can't get rid of the ocean. It's always going to be there. But there's still things that you can do to tame these enormous external forces.
That's really terrific. And I'm going to jump in with a couple of examples. You just couldn't have set it up better, but I'm going to give it back to Jess first so that you can get the show started. But that Craig is just absolutely a terrific beginning and Manny for the show. Jess?
That's what I was going to say.
Well, I was excited.
So, all right. So we'll take a different approach there. So what if we said, so from there, when we're thinking about the little voices in our head, we are, and to give a little bit of context to everybody joining us, watching the Jess plus Scott plus You show with our amazing guests, Craig Calvert and Manny St. Victor, what we're talking about, that chitter chatter, how much of that is our personality? And I know you guys are both very versed in the Myers-Briggs test. So my first question would be is how much of that and the way that it occurs is directly relates to our personality type or our trending personality types?
I think it's best to kind of think about what it is before you add the layer of personality. That way you could use the personality as like salt and pepper on there.
Okay.
So we're swimming on this ocean, as Craig says, of information. It's the collective unconscious. It's all the stories that have been gathered. It's like this big mimetic sea. Okay? Now, different people pick up different channels. That's what your personality is. Now, based on when it's in your unconscious mind, it has no valence. It's amorphous. But when it burps, like popcorn thoughts, that's what one of the metaphors we use for automatic thoughts. When it burps up, you interpret it. It's sort of a warning signal. Automatic thoughts are usually evaluations of a person or evaluation of yourself, a prediction of what you expect is going to happen, or just sort of a general cloudy feeling. And it's up to your conscious mind, your prefrontal cortex, to add a flavor to it, to appraise it, and sometimes, as you become more mindful, to reappraise it. It's an urge, it's an impulse. Now, personality is, so the outside world triggers these impulses. When you walk into a room, based on who's in the room and your relationship and history with them, your childhood history of relationships, you're going to burp a thought. Now, you have to evaluate that thought. If you have sort of to use the Big Five, if you have a neurotic personality, you're going to put a negative spin on it. If you have a low tolerance for uncertainty, you're going to grab that first thought that comes to mind instead of let a few bubble in. Like anxiety level and all those elements control the part of your brain that burps the thoughts and how open you are to new experiences, meeting people, and your personality in that sea determines the charge, the valence of like whatever you value, your core values. When you bump into someone who has values that oppose your core values, that's instantly your bad guy in your story. That's how the lens of personality affects it as well. So the people of opposite personality types from you, they work your nerves until you become mindful enough to realize what's going on.
Well, and one of the things that I would, first off, he's absolutely 110% correct when you're talking about that there's a lot that is under the layer of personality type. I mean, even if you look at it from a physiological perspective, all of your personality comes from the outermost layer of your brain. Okay, these are the newest structures of the brain from an evolutionary standpoint. And when we talk about the filters of personality type, when you, like for example, there are some people that are driven by intuition. And a good way of looking at, yeah, this is Manny and I are both identical personality types, by the way. So when intuition is your strongest driver, and you'll notice, you probably noticed it already, and you'll definitely notice this through the talk, we tend to speak in metaphor. We tend to talk about future possibilities. We find patterns. That is a way of thinking. There's another way of thinking that is detail-oriented. It's ground view. It's seeing the realities on the ground. And if you compare those two different types, the kinds of emergent thoughts, the kind of self-talk that occurs in these brains is going to be radically different. One is going to be more past-oriented, looking backwards at what have I done before this brought me to this point. The other is going to have talk of like, how can I chess move my way out of this? Where's my next step? What's the next thing I can do with this? So I mean, they work in opposition to each other, because when a ground view bumps into an aerial view, they're both leaving each other with a cognitive hunger. They're trying to feed each other things that the other does not want to eat, cognitively speaking, that is.
Okay, so, oh, go ahead, Scott, please.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm chomping at the bit for what I'm going to do, but I know I know that you. All right, I'm just going to do this.
Embrace the now.
What?
Embrace the now. Bring on the chaos.
I am going to do that. When my son was 5 or 6 years old, we took him to a cooking class at a local food co-op, and on the way out of the building after the course for toddlers, we went by a bathroom, and someone went into the bathroom and turned on the light, and there was just bam, okay, and it startled my son. So for years and years and years after that, he could not go into a bathroom that had a fan in it. I mean, it was just one of those things. And the way that I viewed it is that he, in that moment, there was a connection made between brain, the neurons, that was like a 4-lane highway that connected it. So in each bathroom, that would just trigger it. And then when I was thinking about it.
I think we lost you on the mic.
Is it back?
There you
there we
go.
go.
Your cord was,
Yeah, okay. So sorry. So my son did not like a fan on him. I mean, it was almost like a phobia. And this is a 6-year-old. But if you take 1,000 people, 1,000 teenagers to their early 20s to their late 20s, and throw them into a war situation, you just know that a percentage of those are going to come back with PTSD. And it's the environment, it's the outside stimulus that is going to have it. So the question I have is, how much are we in charge of our own destiny, and how can we control our own reality, or can we control our own reality when in the context of these two stories? One is in the context of a child who has a certain amount of stimulus. The other is a person who is mostly an adult who comes into a situation like that.
Well, a child is going to have a different way of processing reality and self-regulation. A child is younger and doesn't have the symbolic representation as separated from reality as an adult, a healthy, mature, symbolically mature adult would have. So to a child, even the threat is a lot more visceral, and it's a lot harder for them to separate that symbolic marker, that fan, from the fear. So,
well, and there's a fun bit of data that came out for some highly unethical experiments that were done many decades ago, where the outcome of the experiment was determining what are the instinctual fears for primates, all upper primates. It's not exclusive to humans. And I'll skip past the unethical part and go right to the results, that the primal fears that are shared across all primates loud noises, reptiles, and heights. Or actually, specifically fear of falling, if you want to get really technical about it. So it's important to realize that there is a lot of things that are based on, in a deep physiological part, and that's what Manny brought up. The visceral nature. That when you're young, your brain is looking for schemas. It's looking for things it can use to make sense of the chaos. Well, sometimes we pick up good schemas, good tools for these things, if we're in a nurturing environment and so on. But sometimes our environment, in my case, I had, when I was 5 years old, a horse whipped his head around and snapped his jaws right in front of me, and to this day, I'm not getting on a horse. I don't do horses. They're very easy to avoid, I found, in Florida. As an adult, if and this is something that Manny and I like to bounce back and forth across in this topic quite a lot. It's when you're how you can be influenced unnecessarily by outside forces that cause emergent thoughts that are within your control, but you just don't realize they're within your control. There's a concept called the island news network effect. And the island news network effect is just a metaphor. So imagine that there is a remote island out in the Pacific. You have a native population that lives a bucolic lifestyle. They fish and frolic in the sea and have a nice, relaxing time about life. Well, once every 10 years, one of them gets eaten by a shark. It's a traumatic event, and right around that event, people are a little skittish of the water. But because it's such a rare event, I mean, once every 10 years, they're right back to business, going back to their way of life. Well, now let's extend this to where we realize there's 100 islands, and a media magnet comes in and goes, I could connect all 100 of these islands with the Island News Network. I can put televisions and satellites on every island, and we'll connect them all. Well, if you do the math now, every week, somebody on one of the 100 islands is getting eaten by a shark. Even if the rate never changes island to island, the reality never changed. But because they see representations of a shark getting eaten every week, now life seems hostile. Now it's negative. Now the self-talk is fear. Well, now let's get to our 24-hour news cycle where we gather every bit of bad news that happens anywhere in the entire planet and condense it into 30-minute cycles. It gives us a fear-based approach to life where we think that things are worse than ever, when if you do the numbers, guess what? This is the most peaceful Earth has ever been.
Yep. And okay, so let's jump in there because, yes, even though we have more peace than ever before, even though we experience all of these different things, I know one of the things that I'm learning about is, and what I hear you saying, is that we live, right, fight or flight or freeze exists for a reason. And we are living in this heightened awareness all the time, which makes things like, oh my gosh, did I forget my kid at the grocery store, to, man, I think I might be getting a flat tire, or am I really going to make it to that meeting on time with all of this traffic? Mountains instead of the little tiny molehills that they actually are, because the kid is in the back seat. No, my tire's not going flat, and yes, the traffic, this particular red light just seems really long. It's just not that long. But we're in this place of constant response, and we don't have a chance to relax. So I know one of the things I'm really struggling with, and I'm working actively on, is how do I step back? How do I hack that part so that I can have a break from that and allow my everything to settle in a way that will change my outlook or give me the opportunity to look at a situation from a different perspective.
And that's the amygdala hijack concept, where you get startled half to death and your lizard brain kicks in. And if you keep someone primed in that fear mode all the time, you can startle them. It's the same as after a bee has landed near you. your whole body is all prickly like the wind. Your brain primes that way. Now, the way you counter amygdala hijack is through mindfulness, through exercise, and anything else you can do to lower your sympathetic response, like the level of triggering. That's the definition of becoming resilient, where after being triggered, it's called high frequency heart rate variability. It's how quick you can get your heart rate back to where you can think. And what's important about it is that as a human, when you're startled like that, there's a cascade of cortisol. So it's not just your body that's inflamed, it's your brain. Your prefrontal cortex is shut off and you're all amygdala. So your empathy is gone, your narratives are gone, your ability to reconsider those automatic internal thoughts is gone, because that's at a reappraisal process. Your prefrontal cortex listens to it and says, what else could it mean? And that's the key to staying healthy, is after you get your emergent meaning, you look at it, and what you do is you take back top-down control and you use your core values for that. You think to yourself, what's my long-term goal for the day? And then that abstraction makes that event kind of disappear into a dot. That's how I like to think about it. You zoom back out into like sky view.
One of the areas, well, unless you wanted to redirect the topic, I was going to bring up the role of personality type in meditation. Because one thing that is almost everyone that we assess, a lot of people go, I suck at meditation. I've tried it. Well, one of the things that with different personality types is there are some personality types that are wired for meditation. It's like they sit down to it and it's natural. If you measure them on an EEG, their brain just goes complete blue focused in a matter of seconds. It's kind of creepy to watch, and I'm very jealous of this because Manny and I don't do this. Our types have what's called a Christmas tree brain, where all the areas of the brain are firing asynchronously and at different amplitudes. The thing to remember is that you have to explore your personality type to know what's your best pathway for meditation, because there's different approaches to meditation. And secondly, you have to realize that the first time you do it, it's like the first time, if you tried to tomorrow start learning Romanian, okay, you would suck at it at first. You would expect that. If you've never golfed in your entire life, your first round of golf is going to be legendarily bad. Expect the same thing from yourself in meditation. Most people don't get past that non-performance hump that is at the beginning of any activity.
So,
okay, is that the fixed mindset? We show up, I'm going to try something, and I don't do well, so I'm never going to do it again.
Yeah, the fixed mindset, the way that works is the fixed mindset attaches the accomplishment of each goal to the sense of self-worth. And what that does is that person, it contracts your working memory, which is your consciousness, basically. Attention and working memory intersect with consciousness. So your consciousness like clamps down, and any feedback, instead of hearing it as an opportunity to change, you see it as a threat to identity. That's fixed mindset work. Fixed mindset kicks in when people have either low self-esteem or a sense of identity threat.
Okay, so how does that idea of fixed mindset directly relate to personality, or are they totally unrelated?
They're related.
Oh, they're related.
Okay, so just everybody who's watching, we're making the assumption you are familiar with the Myers-Briggs. So which part of the Myers-Briggs tells us that we're more likely to trend to a fixed mindset versus not?
Judging orientation versus perceiver orientation would probably be the primary pole for that.
Yeah.
Because they shape. I don't like some of the words that are attached within the Myers-Briggs world, because people hear the word judging and they think judgmental.
Right.
And so this isn't about using these terms as pejoratives.
Right.
But by nature, a judging orientation is more prone towards tradition, lists, milestones, order, even a certain level of predictability. The perceiver is more about, well, no one's tried a triangular wheel before. Let's give it a shot. So, and both have their benefits, because you need the judging person to go, yes, somebody has tried a triangular wheel and it's stupid. Don't do it. I mean, there's a role that both sides have.
Yeah.
But it has those effects that you're talking about. That one is more prone, has a propensity for being fixed, and the other has a propensity for too much growth. Actually, there is a porridge is just right spot.
Yeah.
I was going to say I'm the extreme. I'm the P.
Yeah.
I get that. Yeah. So I keep saying so, and now I'm going to judge myself on that the rest of the thing, because it's how I start my big ideas. How's that for us?
Go for it, Jess. Don't worry about it. Just go for it.
I love it. Now I got nothing. I'm speechless, guys.
Yeah, so it's a need for cognitive closure. That's what that J stands for. The E versus J. It's a need for cognitive closure. And for people who want to go geek, since I mentioned that working memory is sort of your consciousness, there's two examples to use to help understand how powerful this is. There's a concept of stereotype threat. If you remind an African American person before the test that they're African American on a standardized test, their score drops. If you remind a girl that she's a girl before the test, her math score drops. Unless you remind her she's an Asian girl, then she scores super high. That's how stereotype threat works. Okay?
Wow. Wait a second. No stinking way. So
Yes.
the next time I take a standardized test, I need to say that I am an Asian woman.
Well, unfortunately,
whatever identity that you
I see. Okay.
Yeah, the power of having like an identity. Like with me, if I'm in a situation where I'm under stereotype threat and someone tries to box me into well, act like this because you're black, I'll flip into, or act like this because I went to Harvard. You know, and then like you can tell that I'm a stereotype threat because I go into a very rigid set of behavior, but it's a different stereotype because I switched into another set. That's the defense power of identity under threat.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here because I have a real world example, and I want to know if my real world example relates to what you just said. And in my lifetime, I've been in problematic situations occasionally, something that is just really tough, and we don't, the details are unimportant, but I discovered something, and I said, I'm so grateful to be in a position to be able to make a difference here, and if I thought that, then it would be like a blessing, and I could and I would just go forward and I would do thus and such. As opposed to, oh man, this is so crappy. The world is really bearing down on me. Is this what you're talking about? How one frames the issue in one's own mind?
It's quite powerful.
Yep, and it's where you perceive yourself to be within a given group. Now, if you're in a situation where, and it's self-esteem plays a lot into this, into the mindset. If you're in a group and you perceive there to be scarcity, then, and you perceive yourself to be on the lower end of the group, suddenly you're looking to see where the out group line is. That's when racism kicks in, that's when classism kicks in, the perception of scarcity, and that fixed mindset where you have a threat of being ousted from the tribe. You want to look around and see that guy is going to go first, because you know your brain has contracted where you don't have that cognitive flexibility. That cascade of cortisol that I mentioned has happened. So you're pretty much in lizard brain. You're all popcorn thoughts. No high level abstraction, no empathy for anyone. So that's where your raw automatic thoughts at that point.
And I would like to point out from your example that much research backs the effectiveness of practicing gratitude. This is an actual wing of therapy. This is where you can create any habit. it takes work. It takes willpower, of which there's a finite resource. You have to be careful how you allocate your willpower. Don't try to quit smoking, quit drinking, and meditate, and exercise, and study Spanish every day. You have to pick your battles sometimes. But gratitude can be a mental habit. You have to work at it at first, just like you have to work at meditation at first. It's going to be awkward the first time you do it. But you keep doing it, and it becomes a greater part of your day. The more time you spend in gratitude, the less time you're spending in amygdala hijack.
Yeah,
You're stealing moments away from that.
Yeah, because the gratitude puts you in an abundance frame of mind instead of a scarcity frame of mind. And when you're in an abundance state of mind, you do self-enhancement upwards, because you aspire during an abundance state, because you're like, how can I do better? You're more exploratory. Now, when you're in a scarcity state of mind, you're more habit, you're more exploratory. Like, the part of your brain that does the creative shuts down. You're looking to gather all your resources. You're looking to do over and over the thing that you're good at, so that no one catches you slipping, because you might get punted from the tribe. It's not really a healthy, creative place to be.
Those of you watching, this is the Just Plus Scott Plus You show. We are talking to Manny St. Victor and Craig Calvert, and it's all about that little voice inside your head. We're going to take a quick segue, and I want to leave, this is a great transition, I want to leave just a moment to think about that repetitive action, so nobody can really tell where we're at. And think about this in a little bit of a business context as we switch to the shout about, where I talk a little bit about vulnerability. And the more that we talk about something and we change away from how it's packaged to how it adds value, we actually are evolving ourselves and those that we're having the conversations with, and helping everybody's big idea. So we will be right back after the shout about.
1, 2, 3, 4, get my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great. 9, gonna shine, life is good. I'm doing fine, and gonna do it right and do it again, yeah. I look into the sky with all the beautiful color, but there's more than just for me.
I am big into action. I'm so big into action that I am an act to plan kind of girl, which means when I think about polishing an idea, what does act to plan mean? It means we are taking the time to think. It means that we're going to take the time to talk it out and reach out to people with similar interests to share an idea and see where it might go. Is there an interest? What do other people think about it? Where do their brains go when they start talking about it? What actually is the opportunity? And in that, we are able to fuel our creativity to solidify concepts. And those concepts, they make it real. Really, really real. We can start to experience it with all of our senses. It also allows us the momentum to keep moving forward, because sometimes action gets hard, and there's always going to be part of a project that we get stuck somehow, some way, and we just can't move forward. Well, guess what? Because it's already talked about and other people are helping, we've got other people's energy helping us build this idea, which can help carry us through and get through those icky, grindy bits. After we've got all of that together, that's when we get to package it. And most people jump to the packaging first, and then they go work backwards in the polishing of an idea. And that is definitely one way to go, because a lot of people see the finished product, they see the visual, and then they work backwards. One of the benefits of shaking it up and doing it different is that by taking an idea and having conversations about it, we can figure out and be learning what the correct packaging is to reach the most people the quickest when it's ready to launch. So I have a product, and I want to take that product to market because I know it's really going to serve a lot of people. Unless I'm listening and unless I know how it's going to serve other people, any packaging isn't going to work. So I'm going to pull out my Go-Giver by Bob Burg. I took the cover off because I use it so much. The third law, the law of influence. Your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Now I'm going to stay right here. That is not at the detriment of your own We have to take care of ourselves, and we have to be nourished, and we have to be rested, and we have to be full so that we can give that to other people and put their interests first. So when we're putting other people's interests first, and we're talking about our own idea, right? We're talking about polishing this idea, and we're talking about packaging it. We're figuring out what is of interest to them, what would help them out, how can we serve them better. And one of the polishing ideas is, okay, we're in this receiving part of that conversation is learning. We have to receive from other people to be able to give back to a greater number of people. It's a cycle, and it's an amazing cycle that comes with polishing ideas and having conversations about things that we like, we dream, and we are working towards building and delivering to the market. I'm Jess Dewell, and I work with company leadership who feel the pressure to perform and want to be so far ahead in the industry and that the impact of your work reaches beyond the company.
$1 million like you hit the pay dirt. Gonna smile from ear to ear, the kind that makes your face hurt. And we'll laugh, jump, sing loud, not afraid to shout about being happy, living it out. Take a look and see a beautiful morning.
Okay, Jess.
So, right on, Scott. Thank you for that. You know, what I was thinking, what came up for me during that was the timepiece. When we're talking about all of this, and we're in what you guys named as amygdala hijack, how do we take our time back?
Deep breathing.
Brilliant. Any kind of breathing? Because I know I know 12 kinds of breathing, but I can simplify them to like 3 types of breathing. And I know for me, one of them is there's a, which does not calm me down. If you want to get fired up, get that nose breathing going.
Specifically, diaphragm breathing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Very particular. It's what they're sometimes called belly breaths, but it's where you bring in because it engages. I'll let Manny tackle the vagus nerve, but suffice it to say that it's the kind of breathing that it engages that.
Yeah, because you want to get out of fight, flight, freeze, and the way you do that is by the deep breathing, which will re-engage your parasympathetic system, which is your wusa.
Your wusa. Is that also known as your root chakra, or is that something totally different?
It probably is, but I don't know.
Okay, so we're gonna just anywhere around your pelvis, right? From your pelvis to your belly, basically, the bottom of your rib cage. That's the place that if you're engaging, you're able to almost immediately see a result, no matter how practiced you are at this. Because I know I can.
Yeah, belly breathing essentially works for if you're human.
Okay.
That transcends personality type.
Okay, anybody in the audience that's not human, let us know. Scott and I want you on the show.
Yeah.
And we tend to interview humans, but we're into the non-human too. Got to admit. Okay, so the next piece of that would be when we think about those little voices. So if we find ourselves and we can actually get to the point we can realize, oh, I am in amygdala hijack. Now I'm going to breathe. What are some of the first things that no matter that maybe either cross personality type or that you guys could toss out and say, if you do this, then do this, for a couple of things, so that we actually have a take-home where once we find that awareness, we can start actively practicing and changing this to get control of that little voice in our head.
You want to activate your core values, and that's why it's good to be aware of and conscious of your core values in a prioritized list ahead of time. Because the only way to flip your brain to top-down processing, where your goals change your attention, change what are called distraction intentions as well, is by when you activate your goal, the thing that you really, really want to accomplish, the things that you really value, your brain goes down this tunnel where distractors get bounced off. You get brought back. You stop getting distracted. The environmental aspects become less salient, and only things related to your goal come into focus. I mean, and people focused enough don't feel pain, like walking on hot coals type stuff, because your brain can do that. So by activating your core values, you flip your brain out of amygdala hijack, and you basically cascade information from goal down to your entire system.
Is the concept... Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Well, as a layperson, what I say is define the space that you want and then step into it. And is that describing kind of what you were talking about?
Yeah, you want to visualize crisp and clear the things that you stand for, and which one of the things that I've some stuff I'm writing, and we came up with courage and compassion. Those are the two things that can flip your brain around. Like if you're in fear, yet you love your kids, the fear just melts. If you're in fear and you want to just be courageous, at the other half, the fear melts. Your brain does that. When you represent those higher abstract things that you hold dear, environmental influence just melts. That's what makes us human, actually.
That's terrific. Boy, I can hardly wait to watch the show over again because you've got just so many wonderful small nuggets. Okay, Jess, I'm going to give it back to you because you are going to go down a particular path.
Squirrel. That's where I was going to go. Can we get past squirrel if we employ this and we get this focused? Because I have yet to master this idea of not. You were like, distractions bounce off, and I'm like, what's that? Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, you want to use implementation intentions. Once you've established your goal, well, there's two types of intentions you want to put in place, and intentions are more accessible in your brain. Once you're going after your goal, your intentions, that part of your brain, that part of your representation floats up higher. So this is how you make your brain proactive instead of reactive. Okay, so that when threats pop up, your brain is like, oh, we saw this coming, bounce off. So you start your goal and you do like a reverse calendar where you think backwards from your goal to the present, and as you come to each potential obstacle or anticipated obstacle, you say to yourself, if I see this, then I will do this. And if I see this, then I will do this. Those are all the things that it primes you, because you're not supposed to use your willpower and your consciousness to get things done. That's not efficient. It doesn't work. We have willpower, not willpower. So you lay all these implementation intentions, and your brain triggers into a goal pursuit mode every time those triggers happen along the way, and you don't use cognitive energy to do it. It's an automatic process. In parallel, you set distraction intentions. You say, if I see my friends headed to the bar, I won't go with them because I want to make it to my wedding. And when you see your friends, your brain does the thing where it decreases the saliency. Instead of activating all your how much fun we're going to have, it activates the counter representations of not wanting to get divorced before you get married. And this is potent enough where this is the mechanism we use to get people off of cocaine, off of alcohol, off of like sex addiction. The implementation intentions are how you build in your ability to be mindful of your environment. That's how you overcome the automatic voices. The voice triggers, and you say to your brain, if I have the voice do the thing it does, I'm going to do my deep breathing. The deep breathing brings your heart rate back, brings the parasympathetic system back, and then you go back to goal pursuit.
And where personality type plays a role here is that what we often see with our clients is, for example, Manny and I are both, oh look, a squirrel type. This is where we're anchored at our core. Now, we don't stop being who we are. But what we do, and what I suggest for a lot of people to do, is you allow yourself, and you even schedule time to a certain extent, to let the squirrel go. You've got to if you're a squirrel type, you've got to budget in squirrel time. Don't repress it. Don't repress your nature, but begin to explore other sides of your personality. Begin to sort of dance around the functions that your brain doesn't normally play with. And you combine that with building a gratitude habit, and you've got a nice, recipe for a pretty chilled out, happy life. I mean, that's the goal, right? I mean,
I'd say it's one of my goals, a chilled out, happy life that's productive, where I give value because I can receive and support others. Yes, that's I would say. All right, thinking about this, we have one question, and then we're at the end of our hour, so we're going to be wrapping up, actually at the end of our 45 minutes. So here is the question. Can't the little voices in our heads be considered as one of the mental tools that make us who we are and who we are going to be?
Yes, but there's a metaphor that we use. The little voice in your head, they are your filter system. They aren't the true you. They are your limbic system. That's your reptile brain. The true you is the activated values that come from top down. It's the passion that you want to have at your best. It's your best you. The best you has to be able to take the they use a bus metaphor. If you're trying to drive to over there by bus and you come across the inner voices, all the schema behaviors, you have to be able to let them on the bus, and they're going to make noise the whole ride, and they're going to say awful things about you and whatever, and try to convince you that that's who you're going to be. But you drive the bus with the monsters on it. You know, they're not going to go anywhere. But that's the definition of courage. That's the definition of passion, where it's there with you. The fear is there, but you're driving like, sure, I hear you. And there's an exercise called thank you, where every time one of your inner voices speaks up, you say, well, thank you. And then you go back to do the thing that you're going to do anyway. The voice won't go away, but after a while, you realize that you have this outstanding warning system, but you also realize that you have the passion and the willpower, not even willpower, that you have techniques in place so that you are able to be proactive. You know what you really want, and you know what the core you want, and you don't let the voices interfere with it.
And that lets you observe your own responses rather than be part of the responses. You can observe irritation occurring rather than being irritated. It's not removing the irritation, because that's going to be there. It's not removing the stress is going to be there, but there's a big difference between participating with the voices and observing what the voices have to say. I mean, that's the crux of what Manny's talking about, of being proactive with the mental process.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. You guys, I want to just keep going. I want to keep going and keep going and keep going. We have come to the end of our time. And before we wrap up the show, I want to take a minute and let you guys, share something that is really important to you, where we can find you, and any closing thought that you have about this conversation that we've had so far, or something that we might do to continue the conversation after our show concludes.
Well, I'll be later this week. I'm launching Break the Cage MD, which is it's a course in helping physicians become more mindful and more practice intentional medicine instead of medicine how we were taught in med school, kind of mechanistic. I'm always reachable at Mindful 360, where we're building models of thought, obviously, with CC.
Well, yeah, because I can't really, other than restating mindful360.com, because that is where you find more information. The big takeaway is that the more mindful you can be, the better your life is going to be, and there's different pathways for each person to go along that path. And too many people have problems when they try to go, well, this is the best way to meditate, or this is the way to be happy. Well, that might apply to 1/16 of the population. There is a most common personality type. It does exist, and a lot of the recommendations out there seem to be tailored to a particular personality type, and that's just not how life works. You're you.
Yes, you're you! And that is what the Jess Plus Scott Plus You Season 2 is all about, putting yourself first, the supreme unselfishness. And we touched on that tonight with this thoughtful conversation with Craig and with Manny, and we shared our passion for learning and growing. And we're glad for your attention, watching to the end, and please share this with somebody that would benefit from it, and leave a comment and let us know what you thought, how you think, and how you combat the voices that you hear in your head. Thank you to Scott from the Scott Treatment, which businesses capture the potential and the power of video through post-production. Find out more at thescotttreatment.com. And I'm Jess Dewell, and boy, oh boy, do I get excited about just about anything. Squirrel! And you can find me at jessicadewell.com in addition to anything and everything related to the Jess plus Scott plus You show. Thank you, and see you next time.